Well, a very, very good afternoon and welcome to Compassion Check-In. And today we're looking at peace part 2. Last week we talked about peace and the feeling was, and I think Dr. Martin was there, we'll meet soon, the topic was so rich and so broad and so deep that we really felt as though we needed to carry on the conversation about peace. With me are the one, first of all, I've just mentioned him, so let's let him wave and say a quick hello to Dr. Martin Patrick.
Good afternoon.
Mia Morris, OBE.
Mia Morris, OBE.
Absolutely. And Frank Monroe.
Good afternoon.
Frank Monroe, no OBE.
Well, there's still time. There's still time, Frank. I'm sure that's purely oversight. Only oversight.
Listen, if we can have Trump, I think I'm in with a chance.
Oh, wonderful. Now, okay. So peace. Today's about peace. Can you maybe, Dr. Martin, I'm going to turn it to you first because I think you were here last week and I'm not sure that Mia was. Can you just give us, can you just remind us of any of the themes or any of the threads that emerged last week, or any of the things that struck you from our conversation about peace last week?
I think what is really important is to recognize that peace manifests itself in very different ways for many different people. So, you know, when you talk about peace, there is the peace that is professional, there is peace that's personal, there's peace that's political, there's peace that's spiritual. So there are different levels of peace. And depending on where we are in our lives, very often we are affected by the notion of peace at these different levels of awareness and consciousness.
I really like that.
Yeah, and striving toward how do we reach that in the face of everything else that gets in the way.
I really like that. I really like that when you begin there with, you know, the peace in different ways, and I wrote a number of them down. I think I missed one or two of them. I think you put there's the professional, there's the personal, there's spiritual, and you might have even added the emotional. There are all these different levels, and that striving, there can be things that get in the way, including perhaps ourselves, or just the noise, or that hurly-burly, or other people's stuff, and so on. Iris, you've just rejoined us. I'm going to just ask you, just because you were also here last week, before I throw it up to, oh, but Frank, I beg your pardon. Frank, you were here last week. Forgive me. Anything that you're wanting to add to where we were last week, and then I'll bring Iris in, Mia in, and Danny's just joining us. So Frank,
I brought the aspect that the times that we live in and makes it very difficult for a lot of us to actually be at peace, simply because we've forgotten how to compromise, we've forgotten how to see another person's point of view. So for me, until we relearn those, you know, and make those connections, I think it's going to be, you know, the road ahead's going to be very difficult for a lot of people.
I think what you said there was powerful. So just by way of recap, and I know Danny's just joined us, and Iris has just joined us, I just invited a couple of people here last week to kind of reflect on what we covered last time in Peace Part 1. And Dr. Martin first of all started off by saying, well, peace takes many forms. There's the personal, there's the professional, there's the spiritual, and then there's emotional. There can be many, many things that kind of get in the way. And then Frank added, and I think this is a powerful addition of there, that we live in times where we've kind of, it would seem at least, when we turn on our TVs and lots of the interaction, have kind of forgotten forgotten compromise, forgotten that temperance and so on. And I wonder if there's, for me, there's a link then on that note then, Frank, to something about kindness, you know, and that compassion. I was just running a session and one of the chair, no, it wasn't the chair of the board. There was somebody else quite senior who said, we're just not kind enough to each other. She was talking about within the organization, and she was really kind of quite upset about just that level of how we actually treat each other as human beings. And she wasn't just talking about within the organisation, she was talking more broadly than that. Mia, I'm going to turn to you, then I'm going to turn to Iris. Peace, anything that you're wanting to throw into the mix here that bring you in, Iris, and then bring in Iris afterward, and then Danny. Anything you're wanting to throw into the mix here?
Just what's run through my mind: peace, be still. The importance of stillness. Wars happen because people won't keep still. Basically, they agitate.
I think
it's about going within, and being quiet.
You know, Mia, that's so powerful. I don't know if I said it last week, but I've got a quote which says, the stiller you are, the calmer life is. And to sometimes we ourselves are so noisy, and you're so right, and therefore that agitate word on every level. Iris, anything that you're wanting to either share either from reflection from last week or to add?
Yeah, sorry, I just have a slobbering greyhound here. Yeah, I was reflecting on inner peace and external peace, and how that sometimes can be in conflict. You know, that when we're trying to keep peace with other people, that we can create war within ourselves. And that it's really damaging for the mind to have that contradiction to deal with, and it can actually make people physically ill as well, to live in that field of tension if that goes on too long.
It's interesting that if we sometimes aren't, if we're too affected by what's going on here, or if there's an imbalance with our own levels of who we are, then that can therefore have that impact on ourselves. You see it sometimes when somebody doesn't often follow their heart, or if they're not true to themselves, or certain things, that therefore those conflicts can come in. And it's interesting because you make me think about the reverse of something I think of Ivor saying, that those people who really truly at peace with themselves, truly at peace, don't battle themselves, nor do they wage war on others. So again, it takes us back to Mia's point about that being still is so important, so that we're able to not add to the noise and be calm and be able to keep some of that calmness. Danny, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's really busy and full on time. And you were here also last week for Peace Part 1. Any reflections or anything you're wanting to add? And for me, it's just extraordinary how the world can change so much also in a week. I mean, in the week that we've been in, we're going back into lockdown here in the UK. There's the US election results are being counted as we speak. And lots of people may well be struggling with peace and so on. But Danny, love to hear your thoughts, anything you're wanting to kick off with.
I really like Mia's sentiment to peace be still. And I guess mine would also include peace be sleep. Just the restfulness of sleep, and having that time to actually get a good quality sleep makes what your actual quote makes sense a little bit more. Just the being quieter, being still, and then sleeping. I think that's a big contribution to just a healthy mindset to start the next day, whether it isn't full of much peace, just to kind of be able to tackle at least what's going on.
You know, that's a lovely point, because it almost takes us full circle to where Dr. Martin began us with. And I like that point about sleep, because I notice it, you know, that when I'm getting a little bit busier than I would like, and I'm usually quite good at practicing what I preach in terms of life balance and all that kind of stuff, I'll notice it in terms of my sleep, and first of all, what time I'm going to sleep and so on. So for me, sleep is actually it's the starting point. Because if we're not, then that impact, and Dr. Martin talked about all those levels of peace, the personal, I guess the emotional and the personal, otherwise it suddenly have an impact on those. So I found there's something, again, you know, quite useful about that. Dr. Martin, I'm going to turn to you. For you, what's helped in terms of the journey for peace? Because I think that you've shared in one of these sessions before, it may even been the last time, you know, when you're a young man, you still are, of course, a young man, but early on, you talked about being quite, you know, feisty and so on. Fortunately, there's still some of the fire there. You know what I mean? There's still some of the fire there, but I wonder what for you, how have you found peace? I'm going to ask each person, how for you have you found peace for yourself? How would you want to interpret that?
Thank you. through acts of kindness. I found in fact, I really love dinner parties. And one of the things that I like is that I will go out and buy all the food and all the ingredients and all the necessaries. There's the wine and the whatever else we're going to drink. I come back home, and from the chopping and peeling to the cooking to the preparation to lay the table and take a bath, get changed, and wait for my friends to arrive. And then in my house, at my table, are the people who help me to live. And in the conversation, in the information that's shared, I find their knowledge and their difference and their ideas and it's a readiness when you're up to date with what you're talking about, and there is vision and imagination in what's being said by your friends. It gives me inspiration and it gives me verve. And people will say to me, the food is wonderful in the ways that it is. I seldom have someone saying to me, what happened with that? And what I know from me cooking for them and having them at my table is that I am contributing to their health and well-being through the food and bringing us together. It really creates such a wonderful feeling and energy in your own spirit, in your own mind, because you're seeing the people that you don't always get an opportunity to see. So for me, an act of kindness is not just something that you're doing professionally or for public attention. And I truly believe that if you're really doing acts of kindness, you don't need to tweet about it. But instead, you're doing something for people in a private way that enables them to go public and feel really good, because last night was wonderful. I will not forget, did he really say that? Did that really happen? What's going on in my friend's life? Everything filters in, and it's shared in a way that is very empowering. So I really love to give my friends that energy and hope, happiness, food, drink, and an overarching feeling when they've left that I'm so glad that I saw Martin. I'm so glad that I saw other friends of mine. What a great evening. I'm ready for tomorrow. I love that.
Wonderful. There were a number of threads I picked up from that. So you started off with, for you, the peace comes from that kindness. And then you were talking about the togetherness of friends. You talked about learning, listening and learning. And then you talked about that impact on the well-being, and there's something about sharing there. Anyone else want to come in terms of, for them, what's been their pathway to peace, or what's key to peace for them? Something's telling me to turn to Danny for this whilst Kojo's settling in and whilst Frank's settling in. So for you, Danny, what's key? Before you talked about, quite rightly, the importance of things like sleep on a very physiological first level of arriving at peace. And at that moment, talking about arriving, Kojo's arrived, so we'll just wave at him. So Danny, for you, I mean, what's been key for you to finding peace? And I can't remember if you shared last time, has it been an easy journey?
Thank you, Rash. And thanks, Dr. Martin, actually, because for me to find peace, looking back, it's a strange one, and it's been through all of the trauma and all of the hardship and all of the tough battles in my own personal circumstances that's led me to peace. So whilst on one level I found it through the hardship and the trauma, but then that's enabled me to find this level that I feel I'm getting towards now through stuff like compassion check-in and sort of looking and understanding things. But it took a long time. I was kind of never really in the mindset, even though I knew I didn't want to be living with the trauma. It still took a long time to actually go I guess I was seeking for so long to get rid of it, but not really seeking in the right places, maybe. Or I think the good friend that Rash and I shared said just the other day about asking the right questions. Perhaps I just wasn't ready for the right questions, because I'd spoken to this friend of ours mutually 5-6 years ago, and he mentioned certain things to me that just at the time it kind of went over my head, because I just wasn't there. Although I thought I was, I just clearly wasn't, because it's only recently again since he's saying the same thing, and it's kind of resonated more with me now, maybe because I'm in a bit more of a settled place. And then it's all the things that Dr. Martin and everybody's sharing about the kindness and the compassion. I thought before, when I was in a hard place, I was still kind, compassionate. I think I was all of those things, but the pieces have come more from a deeper understanding of kindness and compassion. And just, I was doing it because I was maybe more just, that's the way I am, but which is a nice thing. But to understand the deeper levels of kindness, it's so peaceful. It's much more peaceful in a way. And it's a hard one to actually explain. It's just the journey I've been on, where I'm at with it, perhaps. And it's different for everybody, but that does come into it a lot, as the helping of others and being there for others and listening and being kind, even to when I'm going out and buying that wine, it's the checkout service, just ask them how they are, and if they're okay. They're often stressed and up to it, and yeah, just kindness all around makes a big difference to just your own self. But actually, the one last thing is just the kindness for myself and the compassion for myself. So what Mia's saying about turning towards yourself, going in, I was always doing too much for other people that I felt like I had to, because that's the way it made me feel better. But actually, it was only, I guess, recently I found that actually going more inside yourself makes you a bit more kind of compassionate to others, but also makes it more peaceful for yourself as well. So that's been really revolutionary, because I never looked at it at that angle before. And that's been a real, just through all of this, it's been a real eye-opener, just how important the self is, and how much of a difference that makes to the greatest, wider scale.
Thank you so much for that, because I think a number of rich things you said. You talked about how actually some of the trauma and the battles can sometimes take us on this journey, isn't it? That sometimes all the battling, we realize that we need to find another way. Sometimes, isn't it, all the learning, the hardships, the loss, the difficulty, isn't it, that can sometimes take us on a different journey. And then that point about which, there's a lovely phrase, and I'm going to then bring Frank in and Kojo in. There's a lovely phrase that Dr. Martin had said earlier, that you said something that made me think of, Danny. You talked about, when that mutual friend of ours said, when we're asking the right questions, but you said maybe at that time I wasn't ready. Dr. Martin used a word which I love, readiness. I like the word like readiness and the ripeness. Sometimes when we are ripe and ready for certain things. And then you talked about then that thing about then that deeper journey of kindness and so on. Kojo, I'm sorry, Frank, let me bring you in, then I'm going to bring Kojo in, because I could see your hand was raised there, Frank, please.
Okay, thanks, Kojo. I won't be long. Just to give a slight counterpoint to Danny, who I normally agree with 110%, but it's down to individuals, because we are all different. What I find that when I'm in those moments where, if you like, where I'm not at peace with myself, that's when I actually go the extra mile to go out and help other people, because that is a distraction for me to stop getting in and wallowing into self-pity, recognizing that I have got privilege. I am in a better position than a lot of people. And if I am in that better position, if I use that to help others, that will then help me climb out of my, my if you like, my pity state, for want of a better expression. I'm
so glad that you brought that element of it in, and then we're going to bring in Kojo, because it reminds me of, I remember when I was busily pursuing a career as a singer, when I was really pursuing that actively. And I'd worked before in media, and I was working out part-time. I was trying to get my singing career off the ground in my mid to late 20s. And I remember I had some time on my hands, so I volunteered. Some people might know this story, and I became a volunteer for the Samaritans. And it was really interesting, because what the shift that happened for me was that suddenly I, for the first time, really became empathetic toward everybody else. It became, up until that point, it's been all about me. me, 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 me. And suddenly that journey helped me find so much more peace. That journey of me seeing the world beyond me, because I also do feel that many people say this, it becomes a responsibility at some point if we're on this peace journey to then, I think it comes in a way from that stillness that Mia talks about, then we tend to emanate that stillness to others. Kojo, Bonte, if we can turn to you. Again, you were here last time for Peace Part 1, and I knew you wouldn't miss Peace Part 2. Over to you.
I wouldn't have missed this. I wouldn't miss today for nothing, because I was late. So sorry for coming in late. I would want to take it off from where Frank left off, but I think I would want to lace that to Dr. Martin based on what you guys were saying and finalize it on what you said, Rash, right now. Still with peace, last week I talked about what I had to do in reconnecting and having that peace with myself. But in picking up from Frank, Dr. Martin, and what you said about when the focus becomes just me, just about 2 days ago, for the past few months, and I think, Rash, we've had this conversation before, but for the past few months, I've been looking to access certain people within the industry I want to work in, and it's all about what I want, right? It's all about what I want, who I want to meet, and the kind of business person I want to meet, and I want to connect with this guy and all the rest of it, right? Then talking about the readiness, I was 2 days ago, I just felt, you know what? Can you just shut up and stop this me business, right? And find out how you can add value to somebody and stop this self-interest looking at, this entrepreneur thing where you want to conquer the world and every knee has to bow at your feet kind of thing, and find out what can I do for somebody, right? So I felt, who can I step into? How can I add value to somebody? Fortunately for me, somebody within what I do or what I want to do called me loosely. We're just having a chat. And the person said, I've been looking at this coronavirus. I'm looking at this and this and this and this. And I go, look, have you looked at radio? And he said to me, no, I haven't. I said, well, have you considered this? Have you considered this? You can do this. You can make money this way. You can make money this way. And check what the person said. He said, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how I can make money out of this. But if you can help me, or if you can point me to somebody, I will be glad to jump into it. So I said, okay, well, let's set a meeting on Wednesday. Let's have a conversation. We had a conversation. I said, if you do it, I'll give you my time. But Rash, it humbled me to realize in our strive to seek this peace, you'll be surprised the peace we get by being an extension of grace. As it sounds very religious, but becoming that testament, that extension of somebody's miracle or somebody's hope, and being that the answer to somebody's prayer. So this person calls me this morning and he goes, listen, this thing that we discussed the other time, I've been talking to my partner about it, and I really want to do this. I said, okay, right. If you want to do this, I'm going to commit myself to you for the next 4 months, right? And I'm going to do this and this and this and this. And if you give me these times, I'm going to promise you're going to do this. But Rash, it's humbled me. It's taken the attention from me from trying to meet everybody within the industry by creating the magic for somebody and hoping and trusting that mine will come through in the process without just it being me. I want to meet this guy. I want to meet this guy. Because you never know where this guy will go, meet somebody, and it might connect back to me, or it might not come back to me. But I am ready to be at peace with myself to say, let me go serve somebody than just serving my agenda.
This is very powerful what you're saying. It's very interesting because what I'm seeing here is this link between, and it takes me back to what Mia presented with, that thing about being calm and still. Sometimes because we're so restless, we're actually the one causing the noise. you know, and our restlessness means that we're not at peace. So there's that recognition, actually, hang on a minute, let me just stop this and see, which is why I posted my quote, magic in life happens when we stop expecting life to present us with opportunities, and we start presenting opportunities to life, which is exactly what you described there. So it's interesting with peace that this noisiness, my noise, all the noise that I'm adding to life, and often based on assumption or perception of lack or needing to achieve this or do that. Iris, I want to bring you back in because I can just see that you're basking there in the light, and then behind you is the picture of you basking in the sea. So I'm really enjoying, you seem to be in a nice peaceful place. So let's turn to you.
Yeah, I nearly had the opposite experience. So I'm not disagreeing with what people say, that if you're outward looking, you look to other people, that you find peace by not worrying about your own stuff. But I found that I possibly overdid it for many years. So I was volunteering a lot. I was active in church. I was helping all sorts of people around me. And I was working for charity as well. And then, you know, worked extreme hours because you get very passionate about what's happening there. And then the whole thing ended up that I had an abusive partner, and I was in a coercive relationship for many years. And it actually turned to the other extreme, that I was so much concerned about others that I neglected myself. And actually for me, the route to peace was to stop people, essentially, and just listening what's inside. And I found the deepest place of peace. And that comes actually from a blazing extrovert that I've nearly turned into an introverted way of life. And for me, peace, sitting in my garden under my trees, I have a bench there, and starting the day and just feeling part of life in the universe, and listening to the birds and listening to the trees and the wild water swimming. So that's a local that's a local lake actually. And it's you know, so we swim, sometimes I swim on my own, but quite often with like-minded people, and it's just such a wonderful way to experience nature, to swim in rivers. And for me, being part together within nature, with always other people, without much conversation and agenda, just the being, brings tremendous peace. And I find the same when I take the dog out. You know, it's a wonderful companion. And there is this lovely picture of mindful of somebody walking a dog, and the dog just, you know, watching around, being mindful, and the person mindful, having lots of thought. And so in a way, I'm not disagreeing that helping others, being there for others is a powerful thing, but it needs that balance to take number one serious, to have that energy to give.
It's lovely what you're saying. I love the fact that you bring in that nature and that oneness with everything. And then there's a lovely phrase you said, which ties in with what Kojo said. And then you talked about without agenda. Well, if we were to show up to so many things without agenda, immediately there would be so much more peace, isn't there? I can think of certain situations that are going on around the world. If certain people went with a little bit less of their own agenda, it would immediately be far more peace. And Mia, I'd love to know, how have you found more peace? Because I'm wondering if some of the things that Iris is saying resonates with you. I know that a lot of your background, a lot of the work and leading up to the honour, it's a lot of the stuff that you've done for others in education, in the field of Black History Month, in the field of all of these things. How have you found peace? And can it be a challenging one to find can it be difficult, especially if we're so busy? I'd love to know your thoughts on this thing about how one finds peace. How have you found peace?
Going within and going without. So you've got to be prepared to give something up in order to get peace.
That's very powerful. Dr. Martin, I mean, thank you, Mia, for that. I love that, going without, couldn't agree with you. And then going without, I hear that, I hear that, I hear that. Yeah, Dr. Martin.
I do think, well, I know, particularly in this year, one of the ways in which I found peace is through writing. My creative thoughts, my imagination, my ability to tell a coherent story and to help it to grow. I've said before in many of these sessions that working at the university, it can bring out the best in you. You know, you're academically preparing yourself and you're constantly learning. Lectures don't write themselves. You have to do the research, you have to do the preparation, you have to stand in that room in front of everyone and share that knowledge. And then you have to help all of your students understand and acknowledge and clarify what the subject matter is. And I used to hope to find sort of peace and contentment through teaching them their learning and then helping them into employment. And to me, the reward was when they would say to you, you've been a very good teacher, you've been very supportive, you've been a good mentor, and so on. But we live in the 21st century. I have found that information is not always forthcoming. You're paid to do a job as a university lecturer, and it's your responsibility to help me achieve everything that I want. So I'm not going to tell you thank you for teaching because, you know, you're paid to do that. And I'm not going to tell you thank you for helping me to get my job. It's your role to do that. And you cannot know how much energy it takes not to say, actually, it's not my responsibility to get you a job. That is your responsibility. It is a part of my role to empower you to do that, to make you aware of what the expectations are in the workplace, blah, blah. But when I stopped having that conversation and living with that frustration, I knew I always had to put my writing on the back burner. It was always down the list and everything else was to the front. This year, during COVID-19, I have managed to write 2 novels and get a book deal, which is extraordinary. I cannot stress how unusual that is. I've primarily achieved that because instead of doing all of the things I used to do at work every day, all the time, instead, I was at home writing the novel, novels, you know, and it made me so happy. Every day I would wake up and think, you know, oh, and now he does this, and now she's doing that, and now they're going there. And that constant creative energy and knowing I was always building those pages and coming to the end of the story has been profoundly empowering, exciting, and satisfying. And at the end of the novel, do I feel a sense of achievement and peace? Most definitely. So I really do know taking care of yourself and taking responsibility for your life is a vital part of being able to help other people. If you're always giving out, you will diminish your energy and really limit your resources in how much you can give somebody else. So you must take care of yourself and you must keep yourself well. And then when you do that, you are in a position to be influential and helpful and supporting to others. But you cannot forget tapping into your own mindset and fulfilling your own needs and ambitions is as powerful as anything else you can imagine.
Yeah,
that
you.
To me really is how I get peace.
That's really powerful. I'm going to bring Danny back in, but there's a number of things I just want to reflect, picking up from what you said. So again, you talked about that thing about that going within and finding out what oneself is very passionate about. That's really interesting. So again, for me, there's a link between what Mia was saying, what you said, that thing about going within, often asking ourselves, what's my passion? And very often all the other things can take on. And so for me then, I'm pursuing those areas. So there's something that for me was nourishing and helps us be peaceful by the things that we enjoy, be it writing, reading, the time in the garden, swimming, Iris was talking about. There's something that can be nourishing and peaceful about those things. And take going on that journey. And then there's something about what I got a sense of from you, and Dr. Martin, is that when we pursue the things that we're passionate about also, that there can be something that's kind of enriching about that. And I wonder if there sometimes can be a conflict when we don't. Danny.
I was really enjoying listening to Dr. Martin talk about that, because what came to my mind was, and I suppose listening to everybody else who's giving their sort of summary of how they've managed to find peace, and just saying, you know, from Frank's perspective to Iris to Kojo, like we all have such a different experience to finding peace, and it is in such different ways. And what was coming to my mind was just this deeper listening of our own novels, of the novel of our own life, in that it doesn't matter where we've come from, what we're doing, but just that listening to where our novel of our life has taken us or brought us to this moment, but just looking back and reflecting on that, because that can guide you in the way to finding peace in the future. Whether it is we need to go inside, like me and Iris sound like we've had that very inside kind of development in finding peace because of perhaps our particular, maybe even similar circumstances where it's brought us inwards, whereas other people it needs to bring other people in from the outside, and that's where they find peace because of their own life experiences, their own novels of their own life. And it's an interesting word, actually. I quite like the word novel, because so just in terms of the work that I've done, it's seeing the life as what it is now. It kind of is feeling more of a novel than anything. It is more fictitious. It's more very imaginary than it ever has been previously. And just taking away that notion of it feeling more of a novel than it is an actual true story and a true event makes the piece happen as well. So I was almost unsure to use the word novel, and I thought, no, novel is the perfect word for it. And that's just, I guess, a thread or a tie or a link that I found.
It's a lovely one. It's a lovely one because it's funny. Today I was running a training session for this board within an organization. And one of the very first things I got them to do was, and it was around equality, diversity, and inclusion and leadership, and to try and help create more of that in their organization. One of the very first things I got them to do was to draw their life journey. And I wanted them to connect to their own story and their own challenges and all of the ups and downs. And I think it's lovely that you picked up on Dr. Martin's word, literally, you know, as a novelist, but that novel, because I like both the fictitious bit, you know, both life can be, I often say life is it the truth, is the whole truth, nothing but the truth, it's true. The chronological events are true. Is it the whole truth? No, because you don't know all of the circumstances around what happened in the family. And is it nothing but the truth? No, because we focus on certain things. So I like that novel bit, that it can be a bit fictitious, partly true, partly fictitious. But also I love the fact novel, because it can still be fresh, it can be alive, that we can still find peace. I think there's a lovely hope thing there. Who haven't we heard from a while? Kojo, you seem to be reading or writing something, you're reflecting. So Kojo, anything that you're wanting to bring to the fore from having had that aha? Anyone else wanting to come back in and offer anything else that perhaps we've not? Iris, please.
Yeah, no, when Dr. Martin was saying when you stop doing what you always do, and then suddenly, you know, like writing a book or something, and I actually had a similar experience from a very, you know, intellectually challenging marketing consultancy kind of work. I just came opportunistically. I made a jumper for my dog, and then there were so many people who liked the jumper that I'm now setting up a small business for dog jumpers. And, you know, I haven't been so excited. I mean, I'm not going to be rich with that, you know, but I just enjoy it. And I just think, and in a way, I suppose it is a blessing, you know, because I know how pleased I am when my dog is all warm and cozy and looks smart and things like that. And it's really interesting that sometimes you have to jump off the hamster wheel and actually see where the flow of life takes you, to find things inside you that you would actually intellectually, you possibly would never get to that point.
Lovely point there. I love that. By the way, a quick aside, you might say that making dog jumpers might make you rich. I was just thinking, you know, I happen to be the life and business coach partner of British Library's Business and IP Centre. So once we had this story, when we have these stories of people who built their businesses, of these people, and they'd run this pet hotel. It became so it's interesting that, but I love that thing about going with the flow of one's life, and that can be really fulfilling, isn't it? Because I wonder if a lot of the conflict is that we're not going with either our own flow or life's flow. I think for me, one of the things that I found is, particularly recently, I had a situation yesterday where it's just an everyday situation, because I think that lots of everyday things can often send us out of kilter or out of peace. So we often think we're sorted and so on, and things are at peace. And late in the day, a friend of mine who's also involved in a committee or a set of committees that I'm linked to had emailed me. There was something he was wanting help with, and there was a particular challenge. And I thought, well, why are you emailing me so late about this particular thing? And I'm still kind of busy. And then we, you know, had a bit of a conversation. I was just saying, do this, 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 and this. And then I could see, I paused and I reflected a little bit, because I've been very matter of fact about this and saying, well, you should have really thought about this earlier, but in a kind of nicest way. Then I paused and I thought, hang on a minute. He's worried about this. He's got a lot on his plate. There's something going on tomorrow he wants help with. Let me just pause, step down from my own high horse about this. And what I did, and it was easy. I made a call to somebody else who could help with it. It took me about 1 minute, actually, to help him. It actually took me about 3 minutes to set something up to help him. So sometimes it's really interesting, that thing about, do we add to the noise? You know how sometimes when we just play that game where that self-righteousness, or where we don't, you know, where we just add to, you know, I think that sometimes it does require humility. I think humility is required a lot of the time in terms of peace, to say, look, you know what? I'm sorry that you feel like that, because I could have quite easily said I'm in the right here, but actually, does that actually help us arrive at a place of peace?
But that is wonderful, Rasheed, because there have been many, many times in business where he holds this position, and someone who has a higher executive position in an organization, and it's like, well, I'm recommending that we do it this way. It's a gift, but the problem is we do it that way, and so I actually don't want to take part in that at all. Well, I mean, I hate to bring this up, but you know, it is actually a part of your role here to do that, and you can see this going on, and I then can hear my grandmother's voice. And that voice is a scolding finger. It's like, you know, oh yes. And I hear that voice and I see that finger, and I can hear her saying, yes, but two wrongs don't make a right. And I'll just hear that, and it goes bing in my ears. And then I will say, supposing we did it a different way, but the end result was the same. What different way? So, you know, well, you're talking about going in an A, B, and C direction, but there's nothing to stop us from doing it in an X, Y, and Z position. Now, I have to say it that way within a business and academic environment, because if you use Black metaphor, if you use Caribbean metaphor in a workplace, sometimes it's just, what is this hocus pocus superstitious nonsense you talk to me about? But my grandmother would say, there is more than one way to cook a pot of rice. And I would just know immediately everyone would know. Because in the Caribbean, for those of you that don't know this, proverbs are oxygen in our lives. Which is why when my grandmother would say, the trouble you brew today, you'll drink tomorrow.
It's very interesting, because there's a lot of wisdom, isn't there, in those other things. There's one that I remember, there was something I remember reading, this Chinese proverb, and it links to this thing about peace. And it said, and I'm going to misquote it, never act, something like, never act out of anger or out of overexcitement. So often we know about the anger, or where you're so, you know, at the moment, oh, that's the best thing ever. And that's both bits are so powerful, isn't it? That knowingness that sometimes it can set up that fall because we become so exhilarated, want this and this to happen. Time is beginning to run against us. So I'm going to invite everyone to begin to offer us, as we head toward the end of this two-parter around peace, and it's been useful, isn't it, those different elements to it, inner peace or emotional peace, there's the professional peace, there's the personal peace, the spiritual peace, and of course there's that on that global scale. What's your takeaway from these from this session, or maybe not even your takeaway? Maybe it's even better picking up on what Kojo was saying. What's it that your offer? What would be your offer from your life learning to anybody who's listening to this, who perhaps is wanting to arrive at greater peace? Kojo, I'm going to turn to you first, because I know of all of the wisdom that you've absorbed and that you enjoy absorbing. For you, what would you offer to anyone who's watching this and perhaps they're not feeling that they're in peace personally, professionally, or with others, or they're looking at the state of the world perhaps and they're feeling all at sea? What would you offer to anyone who's listened to this?
It's okay to take time for you. It's okay to administer to your own needs. And if you can extend support, help, assistance to the next door neighbor, to the friend, to that old lady on the bus, to that young man that needs mentoring, to that young man who has some kind of need, or young woman who has some needs, just be an extension of grace and be kind to people. It's like when this whole corona business come up, right? We had to put on this mask, right? And I struggle with it. I don't know, but
it's a business. And for some people, it probably is a business.
Right? I struggle with this whole nose mask thing, right? And I've got 1, 2, 3 here.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt with all these things going on, I really, really struggled. And I had all the reasons and all the intellectual reason not to put it on. But I felt if I'm going to be my neighbor's keeper, can I just for the minute stick this thing on and at least know that I'm looking out for the next person? Yes, I might not find it comfortable. It might not be that easy, but let me have it on and let me be my neighbor's keeper.
Wonderful. Kojo, that's just magical. Who are you going to call to next? That's just wonderful. Who are you going to get to, again, offer us their wrap up? Who are you going to point to next? Kojo, who are you going to select?
Oh, I select Iris first.
Iris, over to you. So your wrap up, Iris.
Stillness. And there is this lovely saying, be still and know that I'm God. And actually trusting life. And I think a lot of people, and I know when I was younger, you struggle to actually switch that mind off and have the nothingness aroundness and that stillness. That takes some exercise and practice. And it's easier to deflect from the inner stuff and looking outward for distraction or fixing, helping other people, etc. So I think the key to the road to peace is that stillness, coming to that point of stillness.
Who are you going to pick next? But I'm going to recommend you pick Danny, just in case he's got somebody wanting to have their haircut before Thursday, in which case they might be desperate to have their haircut.
I will pick Danny.
Yeah, Danny.
Bless you, thank you. I guess go look at some Caribbean proverbs. No, actually, that it's very interesting. It's been another really good session as well, and it's so interesting hearing the different cultures and where they bring in those things, because it's so powerful, some of these things, and everything Dr. Martin said and all those proverbs, like every one of them is just so powerful. But I think for me as well, like it's the letting go of holding, like not holding on, but just letting go of life, of where we're at right now. I'm in my barbershop. I have been for the last 4 months, but I had 4 months where I had no work, no income, nothing. And I'm about to go into tomorrow, another however long of no income, no nothing, just dropping, literally it's like turning the tap off. And I could be really, I mean, very rightly, a lot of people will be very stressed and it's not a good situation and it's going to be financially really difficult. But there is a way I can react to it. If I'm reacting by holding on to like, I must have this much income, I must do this, I must do that, it doesn't open up the space to have that stillness, to welcome in that change that might happen where, like Dr. Martin's experience from writing novels and Iris has found making dog codes, who knows what I might discover in the next 4 weeks if I can just let go and let go of life just going to happen how it happens. And it's, that is such an important part for me in finding peace, is just listen to your life experience where you're at and just letting it all kind of just fold out. Because even if you're not ready to find that peace right now, like Dr. Martin said about, I think I missed this opening bit, but it sounds like some really important parts were said about being at the right place at the right time. Like it will just happen anyway. Like it doesn't have to happen tomorrow, it doesn't have to happen this week, but eventually your life experience may lead you to a point where that peace will just come anyway. So don't fight for peace, just listen and wait for it to arrive. And that's kind of where I've been with that, and how I can see on reflection of just my own experience.
I think what you've shared there is very, very, very powerful. Could you pick who's going to go next? I think that's so, so powerful. And Danny, just to say also, thanks so much for sharing that, because I think that will resonate with so many people who are right now very worried, and then that lack of peace. I think that so many people find a huge amount of comfort and wisdom from what you've said, where they're about to go into a situation where they're so worried about their livelihood, and for somebody to still be balanced, poised, giving, generous, and to give of their time to be here and to share. I think that's a very, very, I think that's quite a remarkable thing. Who are you going to pick next?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. I'm going to pick Dr. Martin.
Just before Dr. Martin comes in, for those people who don't know, two things I want to announce on this recording. Next compassion check-in, unfortunately, is going to be a while away. It's the 2nd of December at noon, but unless anything else changes. No, but good news in the meantime. On Sunday, the 22nd of November, I'm running a thing, basically compassion check-in, but for creatives. For many of you here on this thing are creators in all sorts of different ways. And Sunday, so the Sunday, the 22nd, anyone who's watching this, of November at 4 p.m. UK time, because many people in the creative sectors and services or creative businesses are hurting a lot at the moment, you know, for entertainers, performers, singers, writers, you know, you name it, anybody who's creative. And I know, Danny, you've got partly a creative background, you're in creative industries, a number of you, Dr. Martin at Kojo, and many of us. So I'm running that. Basically, it's called Creatives Check-in Space, Creative Talk Space, and it's a space for creatives to pause and breathe at these challenging times that we find ourselves in, and to share and to connect and so on. Meanwhile, Dr. Martin, your closing words.
Yes, what I do is that I meditate. Meditating enables me to think about what I have and what I don't have. How to use what I have, remember the gift that God gave me as a storyteller, and how in telling stories, I draw on everything that I learned on my PhD in terms of cultural anthropology, along with the process of how to go about researching. I draw on everything that I remember as a child about storytelling and knowing how to satisfy an audience. And I draw on what is, I think, absolutely vital. Something in me knows that my paying job is very far removed from writing novels. And because I've always had to put it at the back, because the mortgage doesn't pay itself, and you've got to be practical, you've got to be pragmatic and responsible. So there are things that I don't have, that I don't always have immediately and right now. I am especially drawn to the point that Danny made in terms of how his life is going to change and how everyone's life is going to change yet again. So meditation helps to keep me calm, and I find peace, and I find my humility there as well as my profound need for inspiration from God Almighty, and that's why I meditate.
Thank you so much for that. And I just wanted to add, I know that many people are sad that there's not going to be a compassion check-in for a while, but one other thing that there is going to be, I'm going to be running a couple of restart coffee mornings for the British Library for entrepreneurs who are finding their business life right now challenging. It's a space for people to come and connect. The first one is actually tomorrow between 12 and 1. And then the next one will be the 4th of December. But I will put all those dates out there. Iris, I don't think we've heard, whose last words haven't we heard? Mia, have we heard from you? And Iris, have we heard from you?
My quote, how we're able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness. That's by Desmond Tutu.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Beautiful. Does that mean we've all spoken? Has everyone spoken? Wow. Well, wonderful. And I just think, you know, last words I just want to offer to everyone is in this time, I mean, I think for me, one of the things that I want to say is about peace. If you're lucky enough to find it or rediscover it, and that can be done by embracing yourself and embracing life itself rather than fighting it, it can be done actually quite quickly. And through a few simple things, gratitude, being grateful for this gift of life, being here for each day, and acceptance, you know, acceptance that all the seasons of life come. So actually peace is, for oneself, is quite easy to arrive. Holding on to it requires more skill and more diligence. But there is that thing also, I just think that thing about also offering that peace to everybody else. And I just want to offer that to people in all sorts of parts of the world, where there's been trouble, where there's been earthquake, and people who are losing people, again, during COVID-19, lost loved ones, isolated, what have you. Lots of people right now in all sorts of parts in the world where there might well be all sorts of things, including the States, where right now, you know, lots of people will be very, very worried about what's going to happen. I think there's that thing about wishing peace and wishing other people well. So I just want to use this opportunity to wish everybody who's watching this peace, joy, love, and compassion, so that it's something that is able to emanate on. So hopefully I'll see you at, hopefully see you at the next compassion check-in, hopefully see you at one of these coffee mornings, and hope that you can come along to the creative talk space, which is going to be a very powerful space. And in the meantime, do stay in touch, and I will then, with everyone, I'll post, you know, any other news or what have you. So we'll stay in touch via LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and so on. I just want to thank you so much. Everybody, do take really, really good care, and see you all soon. Thanks everyone for watching today. And yeah, thank goodness I did record. I was just wondering, did I record today?